liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Spanis Clemens?
Here.
Mrs. Cullen? Mrs. Dolan?
Here.
Ms. Kildare? Mr. Kraus?
Here.
Mr. Rice?
Here.
Dr. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Walters?
Here.
Dr. Yarnell?
Here.
Ms. Kildare, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. I just want to announce that Ms. Kildare is participating via phone this evening. We just wanted to make sure that she did hear us. So if at any time you need to ring in, just when there's a pause, just say my name, or you can go ahead and text me and we'll do that. Okay? Madam President, with your permission, I'd like to make a statement prior to the meeting.
Sure.
Thank you. At our last board meeting, there were multiple questions regarding the selection of an engineering firm for the school district. I would like to take some time to highlight the process we followed and to answer the questions that were asked. When I was hired, I informed the board that I believed that all contracts should be revisited and evaluated on a regular basis to be sure that the district services are competitive. It was my recommendation that we do that for an engineering services, since these services have not been evaluated in an extended period of time. This was in no way an indication of our current engineering firm and that they were performing poorly. It was simply an opportunity to make sure that we have the best services possible for Penn Ridge. Engineering services are considered a professional service under the Pennsylvania School Code and need not be bid. This means there are no set time frames for reevaluation and no prescribed process required to select a vendor. This is because the selection of a professional service, unlike the selection of a commodity, is dependent on a host of different factors that cannot be simply reduced to comparing one single number. To begin the process, I asked Mr. Dalbert, our business administrator, and Mr. Kelly Harper, our director of operations, to develop a request for proposal, or RFP, for our engineering services. They evaluated the district needs and solicited RFP samples from other school districts. The RFP they delivered was posted, and 6 different engineering or architectural firms responded with proposals. Mr. Dalbert, Mr. Kelly, and myself first evaluated the 6 proposals based on various criteria that we had developed. That criteria consisted of the firm's understanding of the work required, their history of previously similar work completed, the background of their employees to make sure that they had the ability to perform the various needs of the district, and of course, multiple financial data. We provided a summary chart that analyzed the information submitted as well as the complete proposals for board review. That information was presented and discussed during a public committee meeting on April 9th. Based on the information presented, the board decided to invite 5 of the 6 firms to make presentations and respond to interview questions. In preparation for those interviews, I asked Mr. Dalbert and Mr. Harper to develop questions for each of the major criteria that we had used in the RFP. I shared those questions with the full board and asked them to add any topics or questions that they would like to include during the interviews. Before the interviews, the board and myself prioritized those questions into a final list that were then asked of all firms during the presentations that took place on June 11th and 12th. At the conclusion of those interviews, everyone was asked to submit any questions or requests for additional information that they still needed to be able to make a decision. Additional information was sought from many of the 5 firms, and other reference checks were completed. At a follow-up executive session on July 9th, the additional requested information and responses were shared with the board, including confidential feedback from references. This was an information gathering session at which the firm's proposals, including their confidential pricing strategies and their unique approaches to serving the district, were compiled. While there was never any deliberation regarding a selection, board members were asked if there was any additional information they needed to be able to make a decision. There were questions asked as to why these interviews were completed during an executive session and not during public meetings. The process is set up that way because much of what the firms are asked involve their confidential pricing strategies as well as their thoughts on future projects or confidential issues we may ask them. It would be unfair to allow other firms access to this information simply because they presented after another firm. Additionally, firms were asked to share personal reference information and to follow up on questions regarding any concerns that may have arisen in the past. This is consistent with other decisions made in the past by this school board, most recently for district solicitor and superintendent. As the facility chair, Mr. Kraus was responsible for making the motion in this matter. Based on his analysis of all the information provided, he recommended Reynolds as our new engineering firm. The board, having had time to consider all information, selected Reynolds at a public meeting as required by the school code. The motion was not specific on the agenda because any firm could have been recommended and considered at that time. The specific contract with Reynolds is currently being reviewed by lawyers from both organizations and should be ready for discussion and a vote in September. I want to be clear that the administration designed the RFP, received, analyzed, and provided feedback on the proposals, and submitted questions for the interview. The board was given all of that information available to be able to make an informed decision and then conduct the interviews. This was a difficult decision as there were multiple firms that made very strong presentations. Ultimately, the board accepted Mr. Kraus's proposal to hire Reynolds as they believe it is the best fit for Pennridge at this moment. I am confident that the board members seriously considered all information given to them and fairly followed the process. I am excited to begin our work with Reynolds, and we will look for opportunities for this community to get to know them and their work on behalf of the Pennridge School District in the upcoming months. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolton. Next, we will move to public comment. The Pennridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to Policy 903, we remind everyone of the following. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the board. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and note their name and municipality. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer rather than to individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. A speaker may speak once during each comment period. Please note that these sessions are designated for comments to protect the confidentiality and privacy rights of all members of our community. The board encourages members of the public to direct any comments regarding particular individuals, such as students or district employees, privately to the superintendent or other appropriate administrators or board members, or to communicate with the board and superintendent privately by sending an email to psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. Questions raised and not addressed may be followed up at a later time, and we usually wait until the end of public comment to respond. So, first on the list, we have Kyle Esposito, East Rock Hill Township.
Good evening. Roughly 6 months ago, I revealed to you a very personal story regarding the death of my close friend and the second leading cause of death for ages 15 to 34, suicide. My hope was that this story would spur you to act on this urgent security threat and improve our school's mental health resources and awareness. Since then, to my knowledge, no action has been taken to address this crisis. Since then, our district has received updated PACE survey data indicating that this problem has only grown worse, with a 3 to 4% increase in attempts among our 6th grade students. Our district was even referenced in both the Daily Intelligencer and Bucks County Herald by Representative Wendy Thomas for our troubling statistics. This problem is not going away. And while action is not taken, our students will continue to suffer. So, do you acknowledge that this is a problem? And if so, what is your plan to address it? Thank you.
Diane Herring, Hilltown Township.
Good evening, Diane Herring, Hilltown Township. I'm speaking to the board this evening because I would hope that the board will make a public statement regarding several recent public social media posts regarding our district performance rankings. 3 years ago, I stood before this board when Dr. Radican advocated that niche was the reference point for ranking. I indicated then, and I put it in writing to the board at the time, that niche's system is inherently flawed. It's also out of date. Currently, there are numerous posts circulating around this town that indicate that niche is the be-all, end-all result for ranking. However, according to niche's own information, they provide corrupt data. First off, they use educational data that is more than 2 years old when they determine the ranking. They do not disclose it. They simply say it is the current available data, according to the Department of Education. They also use this reference to surveys completed, and in some of their rankings that they attribute, they tie as much as 50% to the survey system. You can actually find that survey on their website. I don't know where they keep it or who they send it to. What I can tell you is I filled out my own review of the district deliberately. That review has no quality control. It simply asked me who I was. I said I was a parent. Didn't ask me for a reference. Didn't ask me if I actually lived here. Didn't make me verify I lived here. Didn't make me verify I had a kid in the district. I submitted a crappy review deliberately. It's on the website today as the most current review. I kept screenshots. I'm asking because people are concerned about our standards, and they should be. But the standards dictated by niche are not the current standards. And it's clear we needed to make change, and every year we stand here, and Dr. Scheid does it. For the last 6 years I watched her do it. It's either November or December, and she goes through every single test score, every single matrix. She documents everything. She goes back and reviews it. She lists out everything else. That's our current data, and parents need to be told that. Dr. Scheid posts that information. This is very disingenuous, it's very concerning, and it's deeply troubling that we have people in town who are advocating that niche is the be-all, end-all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Kevin Foster, Hilltown Township. Just to address too, I had one quick question, which is an easy one, but the niche ratings too are actually what we have family that we're looking to pick a school district to move their family. When you go on Google and you look for school district rankings, niche is the #1 result, first 3 results. So I get the previous commenters' concerns about the way the data is constructed on niche. However, it doesn't discount it as a resource. It's been covered in the Intel the last 3 years in a row. Additionally, superintendents and board presidents are quoted in those articles, so it does have relevance. My other question is, can we get an update on the progress of the support staff contract? It's been pretty quiet, and we haven't really heard from the community perspective as to are we making progress, we're getting closer, where are we? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I just want to briefly address a couple of the points that were made. Both Mr. Esposito and Ms. Herring touched on 2 things that are very important to me, both as a superintendent but also as a person. One would be care for our students and their well-being, as well as our staff, as well as data. I'm a self-proclaimed math geek from way back, and so data is vital. It's also vital to know the importance of data and which numbers to evaluate and what their context is. So from a standpoint of student care, Mr. Esposito references the 2017 PACE survey, which the information does come out in the spring of 2018, and we have had that report and have made some decisions from a counseling standpoint. We are in the process of, and actually the board will hear in September, a presentation on a state-mandated K-12 guidance plan, which actually embeds curricular items around student wellness as well as staff wellness in all of our grade levels K through 12. And so it is something that is important to us in terms of wellness at all levels, not just suicide, but including suicide. And we do have resources in place that are used for our students, but we are also looking to improve in that area, and you'll hear more about that with the K-12 guidance plan. The niche ratings are something that I am aware of. They have been out for a few years. I share many of the mathematical concerns that Mrs. Herring has in terms of their review and ability. For instance, they quote SAT scores and ACT scores, but they only quote them from people who submit them. They don't actually take publicly available averages, which are printed and are available. They only print the averages of the people who respond. And so we according to Niche, had like 64 kids take the ACTs. Well, that's nowhere close. There's just 64 kids gave their ACT scores, and there's no way to know whether they actually gave accurate ACT scores. They submitted ACT scores, and they were treated, and they are used as an average from that standpoint. There is a lot of wonderful information on Niche about the district, right? So if you wanted to use the data to take both the good and the bad, it rates our teachers A+, which puts them in the top 1%. According to their data. The district as a whole, although it was rated 101st in Pennsylvania, which is the data that got the play in the paper and caused some of the concerns, it was rated 6th in Bucks County and in the top 20% of all niche schools that were evaluated. And so there are both positives and negatives. I do, and we do look at all kinds of data. That data report that's given in the fall is comprehensive and is complete. We do look at things like School Digger and Niche and those rankings. We don't chase them because their criteria does change and is often information that we can't in fact have any contact to because they are reviews. They are people who are putting information in. I can tell you that one of the things that Dr. Rabarchak, who you'll get to know a little more tonight, is bringing to the district is also a love of data. And actually there is something that he's done in his past that we're going to incorporate that will make Penridge stronger in terms of our way to evaluate data, and that'll get rolled out when we actually have submitted data that we have for that standpoint. In terms of support staff, obviously both sides have agreed to continue to work. They have worked really, really hard, and we are making progress, but they are not public negotiations at this point, and so we are continuing on that path and are very confident that we'll be able to reach an agreement.
Thank you.
All right. Madam President, I'd like, for the sake of the judge who is here this evening, I'd like to be able to take some of the agenda items out of order with your permission. So Dr. Yarnell, if it would be okay with you, I would ask that we could take the contracts for the 2 assistant superintendents that are under your committee. If we could act on those first, I would appreciate that so that we could move forward with the swearing-in process. Thank you.
That is fine. And we do have 2 that are specific to this issue. First, there is the approval of the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education. So I move that we approve the contract for Dr. Kathleen Scheid, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education for the term of July 1, 2019 through July 30th, 2020.
We're all second. We're all second. It went down the line. I started that.
Okay, so moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Walters. Questions or comments from board members?
I hear that I misspoke, that it's July 30, or June 30th, 2020. I tried to do it twice.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 9-0. 8, sorry, we're missing Jen.
Okay. Second motion is to approve the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, the contract thereof. So I move to approve the contract with Dr. Anthony Rabarchak, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education. And this is for the term of August 5th, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
Okay, moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Dolan. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
First of all, congratulations. We are so fortunate to have both of them within the leadership team from that standpoint. So I want to thank at this point the Honorable Regina Armitage and ask her to come forward for the swearing-in ceremony. Any commissioned officers in the state of Pennsylvania need to be sworn in for their post. So we're going to start with Dr. Brewster Scheid. And so if there are any family members here for Dr. Brewster Scheid, if you please come on forward. Right, we're not doing this from the stands. Come on up here and be part of this swearing in. Everyone promised to use their outside voice.
Hey, Mommy.
Very nice. Good evening, everyone. I'm Judge Regina Armitage. I'm here. It seems the new school year is about to begin. There's something exciting about that, and I'm sure it's even more exciting for you with this new position. Congratulations. Why don't I, who will be holding the Bible for you? My daughter. Your daughter. Hi.
Hi, I'm good. How are you? I'm Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? Can everyone hear me okay? If not, I don't need a microphone. I can turn it up. Okay. All right. If you want to raise your other hand, repeat after me. I, Kathleen Brewster Scheid,
Kathleen Brewster Scheid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, correct? Congratulations. Oh, well,
Where's Callie?
right here.
Cheese, one more.
Dr. Rubarczyk? And any family or friends for Dr. Rubarczyk, if you'd come forward, please. Isn't that neat?
I didn't get any pictures of them.
Aw, look at this. All right, so if you want to put your hand on the Bible, and Emily's got it. All right. I, Dr. Anthony Rubarczyk, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education.
Is that everybody looking? Okay.
If this doesn't make you think back to school, nothing will. Congratulations to both of you.
I think we need some more little kids in our mix.
No more in the report check. We're good.
If you could just bring that backpack every week.
So next up is the President's Report. On July 22nd, 2019, the Board of School Directors completed the annual performance evaluation of the superintendent, Dr. David Bolton. It was determined by the board that the superintendent successfully achieved the district's goals set forth by the board for the 2018-2019 school year, rating him as highly satisfactory to superior on all objective performance standards. These included student growth and achievement, organizational leadership, district operations and financial management, communication and community relations, human resource management, and professionalism. In his 1 year here so far, he has exceeded all expectations with his accomplishments, which, you know, many things that I think a lot of people have been looking to get accomplished in a long time, he sped through and you know, tried to get them all done in 1 year. So since he's a numbers person, we're going to have a lot of number examples in here for you. So when you talk about relationships, he had 193 classroom visits, 87 after-school and evening events. He had meetings with 19 community organizations. That included promoting the relationship with the Bucks County Community College to expand dual enrollment and start